Well, I guess I'm going to do this. I kind of put it off for a while, but when I put my shingle out there and said you could ask me questions, I figured I might as well get to it. So my name is Immerlin. It is Immerlin, not spelled incorrectly or said improperly, so keep that in mind. I am about as close as you can get to Bret as anyone else, though maybe Howie's a little closer. I've received a few questions where people had expressed some interest in some things about the Eschatos diagram. And while I understand that Bret is kind of pinning out things that he experienced, I'll do my best to answer things for him. He kind of asked me to. It was kind of a ha-ha kind of moment more than anything else when we were drinking tea. And then it kind of got serious. So like I said, I put that shingle out there for people to kind of get info. So enough of that. Let me get straight to some questions that kind of came our way, where folks were kind of curious about what they had heard or what they had read about the Eschatos diagram and what has been happening in it. So one of those was a little bit rambling, and I'm not going to identify who sent this, but it was a little bit rambling, but I'm going to get to the heart of what they asked for. And that is they kind of ask about the interactions and the rules between people, in particular probably Bret and other folks who, instead of directly transferring over from one world to another, one realm to another, they actually kind of co-inhabit or share a body for a while. Now, in some cases, that is a complete share, where I think Bret would best express it. He was back of the bus of someone else. Those are one where he's in a kind of an observer role, where he would connect to, through his broken Eschatos diagram in the beginning, another entity in another realm and kind of be there with them as they went through their life, not truly able to influence them. In other instances, like with myself, when Bret first connected to me, I was already a young man, well into my wizardhood, learning, and on my first island trying to take care of everyone there when we connected. And it was something that I, at least on my side, understood that I had made a connection. And Bret and I, over time, slowly kind of created a dialogue between one another. And he was not back of the bus, as he would call it, but more of an interactive individual who would show up periodically as far as I was concerned. And on his end, felt the same way. And I understand that that's not the only two ways this has occurred. In fact, in at least one instance that I can recall, Bret entered into an individual who had actually just recently perished, and he effectively recreated their world and brought them back from that state of having just passed away. I know he's talking about that soon in another book called Okomune, so I don't necessarily want to get into that too much. He touched on it in the third book that's coming out, Syzygy, so I'll just leave that for the readers to read, but know that there are a lot of different parameters that could happen. In fact, many times this happened, actually, not many times, but this happened more often than not because his Eschatos diagram was broken in the beginning. Now that he has mastered control over it, it's a much easier kind of process, and he doesn't have to slip into someone else, though that's purely an option. He could indeed just completely transfer there. So I'm going to leave that question aside. If that is you that sent me that question and want more clarification, then feel free to ask another one. Try to be very, very specific if you could. Sometimes I don't do well with the more esoteric or kind of widespread questions. There was a second person who sent a question and said, how long was Bret with Immerlin? Well, Bret and I, we met for probably 180 or so years my time. We were connected. Like I said earlier, I was a young man, freshly minted wizard actually on my first island when we met. And, we kind of hung out and talked and got to know each other over a fairly long expanse. It was one of those things where he came like a friend in the night very frequently to me, where I would work and sometimes weeks would elapse and then he would come back, and sometimes it was daily, sometimes he would stick with me for several days. It kind of varied quite a bit. So that hopefully that helps understand your question about whether I had a normal human-length lifespan. Another question that kind of came our way that I want to make sure and answer was about the monk. Now, I don't know his name either. Bret never really called him anything other than the monk, but I'm sure he has one. Probably. would be the answer. I know Bret has that on his list of things to scratch out, to talk about, to make sure that he has his time. That was a very important event for Bret in his history, where the two of them were together during their most horrible times in their life, especially early life for Bret, where it was a cataclysmic, I guess would be the word. It's a big word even for me as a wizard. A cataclysmic event for both of them. On one case for the monk, his world kind of being challenged and being effectively facing its apocalypse, and him and Bret walking out simultaneously, the monk towards the apocalypse to be the person to shut it down, and Bret walking out of the insane asylum trying to find freedom, and walking down the hall of a courtroom to meet Howie, who awesome friend who had redone his entire life so that he could get the law degree and the experience to get Bret out, his childhood friend, out of this place where he had been unfairly cast, sadly, because of things going on in the Eschatos Diagram. So a couple questions to touch on, hopefully not too many spoilers if you're reading the novels that Bret has penned. If you haven't and you're interested, there are 2 volumes out currently as of 22 June, and that would be Ogygia, Book 1, and Nephili, Book 2. Book 3 is called Syzygy and should be due out July, maybe August 2022 at the latest. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, Okomune is another book, and it will be out later in the year. That is Book 4 of this 8-part series that Bret has laid out. So hopefully you have more questions, and send them my way, and I will do my best to answer them. And find yourself a magic cup of tea, because it is the only way that the day is done.